I try to keep this brief, but it's so emotive and it's so complicated. It's going to be hard. But I really want to keep this short. I'm not going to make a ton of videos about this. I am going to pivot to more personal, existential problems. But I'll say first up, like I know Russian imperialism is a problem. I mean, all nations are monsters in a sense, and great powers are particularly scary. But this idea that America's attempt for the last nearly 20 years to detach Ukraine from Russian influence and make it into a liberal, democratic NATO EU member, the idea that this isn't virtually an act of war, that this is just some benign attitude and that Russia is evil to respond to it, is kind of Saturday morning cartoon logic. You know, I keep coming back to that phrase because it's one of the reasons why I just can't take progressives seriously anymore. Like, you know, you guys need to address Machiavelli's complaint that moral philosophers have nothing useful to say about politics. It's not an absolute truth, but it's relatively very true. Because the New World Order is gone. It was a fantasy in the first place. This idea that we were at the end of history and that we were moving to some sort of international relations that could reflect bourgeois middle-class values or something, like, that was always a fantasy, but it's gone. But the arguments that Russia isn't rational to destroy Ukraine, and God help you, Ukraine, I'm not trying to erase you. But the idea that Russia, if they can't win this war, must destroy Ukraine, that anything is better than it becoming an ally of a hostile power, like, that's just how history works. I don't like Putin. I'm of an opposite spirit to Putin. But I do like the truth. And for all the lies he says politically, his description of what he's doing in Ukraine is far more honest than anything that the Americans are saying. I mean, the Americans are just using Ukrainian blood to drain Russia. Like, and the reason that I'm done with America. I mean, I haven't been to a protest since the second invasion of Iraq happened. But I am more opposed to the US government at this point and its actions on the world stage than just they are the greatest threat to liberal democracy on the planet at this point. They led the abandonment of working class interests, so the left wing has now become this weird culture war obsessed entity that just pays lip service to working class interests, but, you know, the working class have been sold down the river. And it's not only that, it's that since the World War II, isolationism has there's been, the people who are not into sort of pseudo-imperial expansion and intervention around the world and world policing, these people have had no voice in foreign policy discourse, really since World War II. These two things taken together are toxic beyond words. People are so obsessed with the dramatic explosions, they're just not looking at the death of 1,000 cuts that's going on in our culture. Like, and I guess that's it for me. I mean, yeah, I mean, that's it for me. I mean, I guess that's it. It's quite simple for me. That's why I don't trust America at all. I don't think Putin is crazy. I think that, you know, when America makes its foreign policy objective to take away such historically essential, I'm not going to say part of Russia, but, you know, there's only a few states in the world that are actually agents. Most states are not literally proxy states, but they're effectively just blowing in the wind of greater powers. And that's just the way the world is. So many of these arguments that have come from the left for this war, for all the sophistication of the greatest of them, they really just amount to this kind of moral hand-wringing about the way the world ought to be. America has no moral credibility to do this. America has crossed the world to start this war. I'll make an analogy here, because I actually work in federal welfare at the ground level, at the granular application of law to individuals. And I remember some years back seeing an Aboriginal and Indigenous Australian woman, middle-aged woman, really rough background. And she was creating like tier 1 difficulties, really aggressive, really unreasonable, on the verge of like calling the police. And the staff member who was dealing with her at their desk left for a moment. And the staff member at the next desk had also left. So there were two clients there at different desks. One was this Aboriginal woman who was just losing her mind, and like nobody in the office could not pay attention to her. And then there was this middle-class university student, a white kid. And this guy who was next to him was getting really irritated and started getting into it with her, started telling her this is not appropriate, this is how you should behave and stuff. And of course you can predict everything just got way, way worse. The situation blew out of control. I wasn't angry at the Aboriginal woman at that point. I was just like, can you shut the fuck up, you little twerp? You don't know shit. You're making this worse. You're right in what you're saying, but you're saying it in a way that's never going to work. And that's how I feel about American liberal democracy at this point. It's just a fantasy. This is why Trump came to power, right? Because of the working class abandonment and the mindless expansionary interventionism of the US state. And there is nothing insane about Putin worrying about America, given that they just invade whoever they want for the flimsiest made-up reasons, destroy countries, and they don't like Russia. And they've been hemming Russia in, they've been just, you know, they didn't dissolve the NATO, you know, it's like, I can't believe I have to explain this. Like NATO is a purely military alliance, and it's just, they've just been pulling more and more states in. It's like, nations are like people, they act how you treat them. You know, of course Russian imperialism is a problem, because American imperialism didn't end with the Cold War. And not only that, America benefited from the humiliation of Russia, and then just furthered it. Just like, yeah, let's just build a bulwark. It's like, we're just going to run Europe. And the great tragedy here, and Mearsheimer is 100% right here, like Russia should have been an ally against China. Like it is just a disaster. Like I just feel like the West and America is fucked at this point. Like, even if we win this war, and I don't know what winning is going to look like, because Ukraine is so fucked at this point. Like Russia's just going to destroy it. They're not going to back down. They're not going to surrender. Like, the more we win, the scarier it's going to get. I mean, I don't know. I shouldn't sound too absolutist. I'm a bit activated, right? And like, at some level, my ego's firing. And I'm not going to bang on about this. But I just want to explain why I am fucking done with the US government. And I'm done with any kind of like leftist support for these endless wars that America fights. You know, because anyway, it's a terrible time. We're living between eras. The unipolar era has ended, and things always get shitty when power vacuums appear. And I hope the war ends as soon as possible. And I hope Ukraine and Ukrainians have peace and can rebuild their country, free from Russian and American meddling. But, you know, we live in the world. There's only a handful of countries that are free, and if liberal democracies run around with foreign policies acting like, you know, Machiavelli never existed, or never had anything important to say, and just, like, God help us. And God help the karma that we've got coming.